Our first speaker is the first female representative of the Youth Party List or Kabataan, Filipino for Young People, in the House of Representatives of the Philippines. Our speaker also served as the youngest lady legislator of Congress during her first term at the age of 26. In 2015, she became a nominee as the president of the largest network of student governments, the National Union of Students of the Philippines, and led forming the Rise for Education R4E Alliance. As the principal author of the Comprehensive Free Public Higher Education Bill way back 2017, she worked alongside R4E in pushing for passage of a landmark law benefiting around 2 million college students each year since 2018. The representation's legislative agenda includes education, health, well-being, gender equality, good governance, employment and socio-economic reforms for people's welfare, and thus for garnering more victories as one of the principal authors of Free Public Internet Access Law in 2017. Our speaker maintains meaningful engagements in hundreds of schools and communities yearly by empowering and enabling the youth to unite in shaping the present and future and bringing new politics of hope and action, serving the people. She is currently a mover volunteer in the Youth Support Relief Network, distributing food and essential aid to disaster victims and their rebuilding efforts. Before Congress, she is managing stuttering ever since. She is also the founding president of a support group for and by people with the stutter. This is one of the pressing reasons why she vows to push legislations and oversights on safeguarding accessible and quality healthcare and the rights and welfares of people with disabilities. Currently on her second term and part of the 12 House committees, she is the youngest of the Board of Trustees of the Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development and a member of the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights and serves as ambassador for various nonprofit organizations. With such great honor, I introduce to you Honorable Congresswoman Sara Elago.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Elago. I represent ang Kabataan Party List at the Seoul Youth Party List representation in Congress, and we're also present in schools via the formation of our chapters in schools and communities. Now, that's how we maintain the meaningful youth participation, ensuring that our work in Congress is not divorced from the actual needs and aspirations of the young people at the grassroots level. So we're glad that we have this opportunity with Asia Pacific International Model United Nations to collaborate and cooperate and open greater space for dialogue and conversation and to share our insights with regard to shaping the future, especially now that we are in the midst of a pandemic, an unprecedented health crisis that is affecting all parts of our society, changing lives and livelihoods, affecting us not only now, but changing the course of our future. So let me first greet our Secretary General, Christian Gerardo Bartolazo. Hello. At JV Cañares, the director, who's I met from the College Editors Guild of the Philippines. Today is also the celebration, the second celebration of the National Campus Press Freedom Day, since it was passed in the year 2018. So now we have the celebration, the commemoration of the National Campus Press Freedom Day, but we aspire for more. We hope that all the attacks against campus press freedom, attacks on campus journals or student journalists must stop, and we must continue to promote and protect media freedom in our campuses and ensure that what we exercise within the gates, the halls of our campuses are also exercised and can be exercised without fear, without favor, without pressure from business and political interest in not only in the Philippines, no, but in the whole world, because that's how important critical and free press is, no, for upholding our democratic values. So now let me congratulate you, for holding this AP in this times, in these trying times, because we need to have this uh, open and continuing advocacy work, to ensure that there's inclusion and participation of young people in all aspects of governance, in the pandemic response, and in building a recovery plan and influencing a sustainable and just transition to towards the better normal, to ensure that there's no citizen left behind, that all learners, all young people, the youth, our voice will not only be heard, but actually be used, to influence the policies, the programs and activities that will be funded by our governments. Now, the United Nations has a really special role, especially now that the Philippines is subject, of a report, presented before the Human Rights Council. Now, let me know later on, during the open forum or open dialogue, what the UNHRC representative here thinks about the latest report on the widespread human rights violations and the persistent impunity in the Philippines. But before we go to that discussion and sharing of insights, now let me just introduce our party list representation. Kabataan, being a genuine youth sectoral party or an organized group of youth, whose primary advocacies are on education, rights, labor, and services, invites the Filipino youth, all of us, the young people of the world, who are working and exercising their political and civil rights to shape our future, to come together, because this is where the strength of the young people, the youth, lies, in the power of our unity. Uh, our strength is in our unity. And when we're working together for our dreams, our aspirations, we are able to realize a better life and a better future for all. Not only for our sector, but for our families and for our nation. And as the youth party list representation in Congress, we are committed to giving voice to the marginalized youth, because that's the noble cause of the party list system, to be able to give voice and raise the voice of sectors from marginalized, underrepresented, and vulnerable sectors. And also for those who have yet to gather courage or bravery with caution to speak out on their issues and speak up and gather or muster courage and confidence to speak up and give voice to others. Our programs are in line with the mission of heeding the call of our national hero, one of the esteemed heroes in the Philippines, the Dr. Jose Rizal, who dubbed the Filipino youth and the youth as the hope of our nation. We firmly believe that this is more than just a mere definition, but a call to action, a battle cry for all the young people to raise their voice for positive change, for positive development in their communities. And empowerment for such significant role is crucial. We firmly believe in the power of information and persistence. We make each reform more meaningful and relevant to the call of the times through. And this is what we need to have in the building of a better normal. Inclusion and participation of young people and all stakeholders. How? The first is to conduct dialogues and discussion with even those who may have differing views from our party list representation, and subject all our programs, activities, and policies to debate, to a collegial discussion, in and out of the House of Representatives, and especially with those who are not members of the House. A second is to learn from our constituents and our fellow youth, especially those from other sectors such as peasants, workers, professionals, women, and indigenous peoples and their subgroups, such as people with special needs and those serving in public offices. We must continue to hold power to account. That's particularly one of the reasons why young people are often targeted and singled out, because they're unafraid not to speak up and say what needs to be said, especially in terms of um, speaking truth to power and holding power to account. And lastly, our lobbying, lobbying with and alongside the larger number of people, wherever and whenever our voice can be amplified and help contribute to a truly democratic society. So we hope not to continue to work with you to advance all these calls for meaningful participation, thorough and careful deliberation for building a better, normal, and a sustainable future. We're now in our fifth term in Congress in bringing the politics of hope, action, and development. We're going against the grain of traditional politics that is still ruled by uh, guns, goons, and gold, and now glitches because of reports of data manipulation, and the deliberate use of social media, media platforms to discredit or destroy their reputation and to have character assassination of political rivals. So I believe as the representative of the young people in Congress from the marginalized sectors, we we hope and we have faith in our generation that we can finally end this uh, broken system that is still ruled by the few elite. And we must ensure that our democratic society, that people, the people on the ground, all those who are working to advance genuine societal change, have claimed that power to shape our future. In Congress, we have filed and passed, through and with you, thoroughly studied measures which we believe are needed to correct deeply scandalous inequality among Filipinos, with the Philippines having one of the highest rates of income inequality in the world and the highest in Southeast Asia. In addressing this deeply entrenched problem is the development we need, the development that we must shape. And since it's a must, we believe that we can. This is not impossible. We have the power to make the impossible possible through our unity and our commitment to really follow through on all our efforts inside the model United Nations. Our efforts should not remain on recorded videos, on our recorded streams, online in the cyberspace, but this must be actualized through our practice on the ground, influencing more young people and those who are affected to speak up on these issues. And as further articulated by the economist and philosopher Amartya Sen, and I quote, development requires the removal of major sources of unfreedom. Development requires the removal of major sources of unfreedom, poverty, as well as tyranny, poor economic opportunities, as well as systematic deprivation, neglect of public facilities, as well as intolerance or overactivity of repressive states. I hope that this will be one of our influences in building the better normal, that development that we build and create, must be inclusive, democratic, and most of all, have the interest of a sustainable future in mind. That is giving priority to the welfare, the interest of the people of our planet and our environment. We talk about here not just of our economy, no, but with the people at the core of ensuring that our economy works, no, for their benefit, for their interest, and with utmost regard, no, to our environment and the future of our planet. And we've seen, no, how young people, children even, are at the forefront of this fight for a sustainable future. All these calls in our climate strikes, all our actions calling for response to climate emergency are with young people and children at the fore. They are calling for uh, big businesses and corporations to um, consider, and put the welfare of people first, before the planet, people first before profit. And we must do away, with all the projects that would sacrifice, the future of this nation. For instance, in the Philippines, we're part of the Makabayan Coalition. Kabataan Party List is part of a bloc which called for stopping the reclamation projects in Manila Bay, because there's this study by the Resilience Institute and the University of the Philippines, um, projecting that a lot of our cities in the metro, would be submerged by the year 2040. And this was also presented, in a lot more studies, saying that a lot of our metropolis, Manila, Bangkok, if we don't stop with all, uh, if we don't lessen, if we're not successful with all the uh, efforts now in reducing coal carbon emissions, and if we continue to conduct all these projects and allot funding, for new coal power plants and the continuing reclamation of our base, affecting the livelihoods of our fisher folks, then we may face a future, without the cities around. So that's how important our action now. And we hope, hopefully in the next State of the Nation address of the president, and in the upcoming elections in your countries, in our states, that we're able to put, the climate crisis at the core of the debate, discussion, presentation, and plans for the future. This also affects, the uh, possibility of future pandemics. So we must act on climate crisis now. We must stop deforestation. We must ensure that bigger economies are accountable, and we're able to help, developing economies such as the Philippines to have financing. We have the Green Special Fund, all these climate financing efforts. We're able to help the smaller economies such as ours to have, and to hold all these programs, plans are realized on the ground. Okay, so someone is asking about our presentation. Okay, I'll give you a snippet, of the state of the youth here in the Philippines. Most of these issues are not peculiar to us. These are common issues that are barriers, to economic and political participation of young people around the globe. So our states, we are all, most of us, as I've browsed through the participation of our APIMUN, uh, most of us are signatories. All that are present here are signatories to various declarations of the United Nations, ensuring the role of young people in nation building and in uh, shaping the public policies and influencing people's behavior. So we must stand by, all these declarations and uh, guarantee, the observance and adherence of our states to such call to remove all barriers to participation of young people. So here we have the barriers in terms of how our states address the public health crisis. We must focus on strengthened, heightened measures, focusing on stopping the spread, or controlling the transmission of the coronavirus. In the Philippines, we have rising a number of cases, and this has caused an unprecedented economic fallout. The government has projected that our economy will shrink at negative 3.4%, but other international financial institutions projects that it will be as high as negative 8%, no, in terms of the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic in our national economy. One notable part of the report is this. No? It says that in the report of Capital Economics that despite the Philippines having one of the longest and most severe lockdowns in the region, there are still few signs that the virus is being brought under control. So there, you can just um, forward the slides to my topic now, and that is the effect on national economy. Then we're seeing worsening hunger, state of hunger. In the latest surveys in the Philippines, we've seen how the number of hungry poor Filipinos has already reached more than 5 million families. In terms of education, our call, and I hope you can help us craft a better solutions and policies for this, but our call is based on the recommendation of UNESCO for safe reopening of schools. So that is based on safe operations. The focus will be on learning. We must ensure that all policies and programs will reach the most marginalized and vulnerable sectors, uh, PWDs, uh, and that the subsidies, support for educational institutions will be focused not only on physical health needs, but uh, the mental health well-being of the whole education community. So support for mental uh, health awareness and guidance for students, teachers, and all the workforce in schools. So we've seen how in many parts of the world we're experiencing problems with the widening gap in digital access, internet connectivity, and income divide. And this has affected the opportunities for young people to continue their learning amid the pandemic. So they don't have internet access at home, connectivity is unreliable, the burden of fees, internet fees, unconducive environment, no instruction, all are self-study, but with harder workload, no adjustment in grading. So later, if you have information of the good practices in your countries, then you may share with this youth representation. The student councils, the student representations have been very vocal on these issues to help us, policymakers, to craft a better responses. So they have conducted online and offline efforts. They've brought their demands before the relevant institutions. We've filed resolutions before Congress. I'm calling for a universal tax policy, the promotion of health literacy, having an education emergency relief fund for financial assistance for students, teachers, and smaller education institutions. We have also expressed our strong oppositions against budget cut in the Department of Education's budgets and all the agencies um, addressing the major education crisis we are in now. We've experienced about a 40 billion in budget cuts, a budget that could have been allotted for a financial support for the education community, the budget that could have been used, no, for ensuring that there's complete access to water, sanitation, and hygiene in our schools, a budget for training and capacity building of teachers, budget for free, better, and safer internet, and support, no, for all the physical and mental needs of the whole community. So this is the framework that we're using for reopening of schools. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, the call, the pursuit for having a universal promotion is a globally recognized response in ensuring that there's learning continuity even under a state of public health emergency. So I quote from this framework, it says that we must consider universal promotion wherever possible and assess students' level of learning following school closures to inform remedial efforts. Okay, so next, let's look at the state of the youth in terms of health. So we've talked about what's needed for the COVID-19 pandemic response. The World Health Organization has been very active, and they must be now in terms of guiding states on how to have the backbone response implemented in our home countries. Testing, tracing, ensuring treatment, isolation of all sick. And while we're addressing the COVID-19 crisis, we must also ensure that there's essential and uninterrupted health services for other patients. So there's the impact on the mental health crisis, sexual and reproductive health and rights, that should be addressed. So we must take this opportunity to say, to our states, to our parliaments, that now is the time to really prioritize and expand our public healthcare system, ensure support and proper compensation for all our human resources for health. The young people and the general situation of the people is largely influenced by the state of employment and labor. So not only in the Philippines, but around the globe, we're seeing economic fallout. So a lot of displaced workers, uh, other families depend on the breadwinners for support, for education, and for other needs, to battle hunger, to ensure that children gets the proper nutrition and support as they grow up. So apart from expanding the public health system, our states must also guarantee social protection to help everyone in need, protecting jobs, wages, and workers' rights. So at the center of all these calls to address the needs of the youth and the young people in education, health, and employment is our rights. Our fundamental freedoms are free speech, free press, our right to organize, associate, our, our freedom of a peaceful assembly. These fundamental freedoms are critical in shaping the pandemic response and building the recovery plan. The prospects in each country and the needed leadership and guidance would depend on the situation of our countries. Now, in the Philippines, it's we hope that the Philippine government, and we are demanding full accountability and responsibility and explanation, clarification, um, display of a strong commitment to address what's in the most recent United Nations Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights report, that uh, states that our country has a heavy-handed focus on countering national security threats and illegal drugs that has resulted in serious human rights violations in the Philippines, including killings, arbitrary detentions, as well as the vilification of dissent. So these are the highlights of the latest report from the UNHRO. And as the UNOHCHR presented this before the UNHRC, our Department of Justice made a commitment that they will have an independent investigation on this. But on our part, as a youth party list representative, having seen how all our resolutions have remained unheard in the Committee on Human Rights, the process in terms of ensuring that there's speedy resolution of all these cases are not consistent, then we still hope and we echo the call of the UNOHCR for the UN to resort to international accountability mechanisms to help the Filipino people to stand for our democratic values, to uphold the dignity of the people by investigating and making sure that those in power, those who are responsible for all the human rights violations, would be accountable and will be brought to justice. Okay, so we're also seeing passage of several security laws, not only in the Philippines, in Beijing, that have a large effect now in Hong Kong, vilification of dissent, the use, weaponization of the law. It's there's a particular term coined for this, the weaponization of law against critics and political opposition. It's called lawfare. No? It's warfare through the law, and we must stand against this lawfare because the law must benefit and must work for the interest of those who have less of the voices in our society, and not uh, just to be used and weaponized by those in power. So here, you can see some of the vilification of dissent, fake news. The problem with the technology, well, it has so many advantages for those who would want to use it for social good and to foster a unity among the young people. But when it's used to spread false information, as in the slide, the fake statements that could legitimize attacks against our party's representation. Our grave concern is that a fake news is viral. It spreads really fast. It reaches a wide number of people online. But all these fact checks, they have very little coverage and reach compared to the false news. So we're glad we have many more uh, independent fact checkers now. The media the critical independent media have been ramping up efforts to battle disinformation and raise awareness on its effects on our democracy. But we must continue all our efforts. In Congress, we have the critical media and information literacy. Again, it's based on the recommendations of UNESCO in crafting laws, policies, legislation for media information and literacy that's embedded in the education system, treating young people, all learners, and actors in the education community as not just victims of a broken system, but as actors, who can actually use their voice to change what needs to be improved or developed. So again, we rely on the power of the youth as force of change, as change makers, blazers, not only in Congress. Our calls are all reflected through our legislative work, from the mass testing bill, strengthening public healthcare system. It's also in our resolutions. You can put forward later on your recommendations for contents of our resolutions, and how we can continue this conversation, this dialogue, so that we can continue to press on the people in power to really serve the interests of the people in our nations and to serve global solidarity. Okay, so we're maximizing all platforms in Congress, online, offline, cyberspace, our courts, and in the upcoming State of the Nation address, we hope that we can also get your support and solidarity to uphold our fundamental freedoms, protect our human rights, protect our democratic values, protect the voice of the people. Now, by using the hashtag So Nagkaisa, it's a State of the Nation address, united. It's the united hashtag for various sectors coming from the schools, businesses, communities, church workers who are calling to defend our fundamental freedoms and to do away with autocratic uh, and dictatorial type of leadership in public service, and but service that really is built upon the hope and the collective aspiration of the people to advance genuine and positive societal change. Thank you, APIMUN. Thank you for the organizers, the representatives, all the participants, or viewers. We may continue to hold on to this hope and hold on to this hope firmly, so we can continue to uh, make a great deal of difference for our nations. Thank you and gracias.
Thank you so much, Miss, and also okay, we have questions coming from the body. I'll call them by order as instructed. First is from the delegate from Austria for the United Nations World Tourism Organization. She wants to ask you, Honorable Congresswoman, on what is your opinion regarding academic freeze? Do you think the Philippines is ready to open school using blended learning? Lago.
All right. Our stand is to support the call for hashtag learning never stops. And the basis, no, the basic requisites must be considered fulfilled. Uh, the safe operations focused on learning, policies, programs are in place to reach the most marginalized and vulnerable groups. And the support for the protection of health of the whole education community. Uh, in the current situation, academic freeze for the Philippines cannot be implemented at a blanket level. No? We can't have a blanket implementation of academic fees because there are varying levels of risk in our communities. And studies have shown that students, children who have longer periods of disrupted classes are less likely to go back to school. Further, it has effects on increased risk of teenage pregnancy and child labor, and this may also increase the risk of domestic violence for those who have to stay at home, but they have other abusers with them at home. A lot of children also rely um, in school and education support for feeding, for battling hunger through various school feeding programs. So our call is for the governments, for the states to heighten their efforts focused on health, giving priority to um, the battle against COVID-19 at the health front to hasten flattening the curve and raising the bar in support of our public health system, because this would be the basis for decision making in opening our classes, in opening our economy. So we must ensure first and foremost that health and well-being is well protected and promoted. So for academic fees, no to blanket implementation of this. Learning never stops at the immediate And the most urgent, I think, is um, addressing the sidelining of students' voices. We have even received reports of gag orders and waivers stating that students should not comment or criticize online on how their schools are responding to the education needs of the students. So instead of issuing all these gag orders and making students and their parents sign these waivers of silence, we must ensure inclusion and participation of students and learners' voices in all aspects of the education pandemic response and building the recovery plan for safe reopening of schools.
Thank you, thank you, Honorable Congressman. Second question is, oh, there are a lot, but I'll try to read three as instructed by the Secretariat. Um, what is your message for us? I'm sorry. What is your message regarding the increasing cases of COVID in the Philippines for older adults who are getting dissatisfied with how the government has allowed the increase of cases? The question is from the United Nations Security Council representative of the Russian Federation, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, so I'll go back to the inclusion of the voices of the people. Uh, in my presentation, I've included there the list of people's demands. These are not only wish lists, but these are calls, crafted through studying how the other countries have flattened their curve. So from ensuring that mass testing is free, accessible to those. To effectively combat COVID-19, we must guarantee the right to health, that no one is denied the immediate medical attention that they need. There shouldn't be any barriers for them to seek healthcare. In the context of the Philippines, we've suffered a lot from a highly privatized and marketized healthcare system, that those who have less in life are afraid not to go and seek for medical support and assistance because they're afraid of fees, or their pockets couldn't afford such healthcare, even checkups, uh, because of the high cost of hospital fees, healthcare related bills. So um, my advice and my message to all advocates and to all who care about this situation is to continue to speak up on these issues. We've filed all the necessary measures in Congress now that we're opening up the second regular session, and we're about to tackle the recovery plan in the Bayanihan to Recover as One bill. We must ensure that first and foremost, it would focus on responding to the public health emergency, not charter change, not terrorizing critics, not silencing dissent, not putting off criticism, but um, having the right to health, the right to decent work, jobs, at the core of the pandemic response. Enough of the suffering, enough of incompetence and negligence. We must ensure, as representatives of the people, that the people are heard and their demands are acted upon.
Okay. This is a little bit. This next question is, I don't know, but how does the Honorable Representative Sara Elago see the typical Filipino behavior that says just because you are younger, you do not know anything that older people know? It's like breaking the stigma of that young people doesn't know anything. It is from the
Yes,
question from the UNWTO from Saudi Arabia.
yes. It's nothing new, In fact, in my case, this should serve as an inspiration to do our job well, by staying true to our mandate, and that is to give voice to the marginalized and underrepresented sectors. This is actually a grand opportunity for us to be heard, to be able to break the stigma and discrimination based on age, because we've proven, our party list representation itself is a testament to the power of the young people when they come together and stand united uh, in pursuit of collective efforts. So now, since we are that generation who are most connected, most informed, because of the rapid advance of technology, we have the internet. Most of you know who will be um, voting for the first time in the next elections have not, heard of a world that is not, connected or without internet. So we must use this for the social good. This a rapid advance in technology should not be used to divide us, because that's what dictators and abusers of powers do. Learn to divide the people. If they can learn to divide us, then we must also learn, how to go beyond our differences, and forge unities for um, pursuits that are greater, than our own. So our theme, for this APIMUN is the justice, working for a just transition uh, towards the better normal. So that transcends, even generations. So I hope that this serve as an, an inspiration for us to unite and to continue our tireless persuasion and education, um, go against the grain of ageism. We're not defined by our age. It doesn't necessarily follow that if we're young, we lack experience, etc., etc. This is actually our strength, because we have so much to fight for. And at this point, I can really say, that we have nothing to lose and everything to fight for. We must, um, we are here, because we are imagining a just and sustainable future. And I believe, and we believe in Kabataan that this type of spaces, like the API Moon and all the youth engagement are spaces, to advance this type of participatory governance and deliberation and participation with the rights of the most in need at the core of our action.
Thank you very much, Miss Sarah Elago. And apparently, the three questions are already finished. Should I call the presence of our Secretary General, Mr. Siege Bartolazzo, to present the certificate?
So the Asia Pacific International Model United Nations presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Honorable Congresswoman Sarah Jane Ibanez Elago for imparting her valuable insights and inspiration to youth advocates across the globe at the Asia Pacific International Model United Nations online conference V.3 with the theme Global Transparency and Justice for the World's Innovation in the Midst of the COVID-19 Pandemic, held this July 25 to 26, 2020 via Zoom. Signed by the Project Director of APIMUN, Assistant Project Director, Secretary General, and Undersecretary General. Thank you so much, Ms. Sarah Jane Alago.
Thank you.
So what's gonna happen right now is we'll take a picture. So yeah, we'll take a picture with our honorable congresswoman. So Mr. UNWTO Vice Chair.
Yes, I'm here.
Delegates, you can open your cameras so that we can have a picture, a virtual, a picture with honorable congresswoman.
Yes. Christian, JB, and to
Oh, Ma'am, we
Cong,
can't
you're
hear
on mute.
you. We can't hear you, ma'am. Oh, she has to leave or something. We
Okay,
can't
so
hear
Let's
you.
let's take a
okay,
picture. Like
Me?
do it. Okay. Yeah.
okay. So let's go. Okay, one,
One, two.
one, two, three. Okay. Okay. For the other side. Okay. So one, two, three. Okay. So last request. Can we do the APIMUN pose?
Wait,
Just like this.
like the triangle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't
Like
think.
this.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So one, two, three. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, delegates. Thank you so much,
Thank
Congresswoman
you
Sarah
so much,
Elago.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so